And why did you wrap her entire head in the duct tape?
Probably so she couldn't scream.
Throughout history, the world has witnessed brutal and heinous acts of violence. But what's most disturbing is their horrible conduct, from laughing in the face of victims to mocking the court.
I didn't do anything wrong, man.
In this video, you are about to see some offensively renowned convicts who showed no remorse in court.
What did you feel when you pulled the trigger? I felt powerful.
Scott Nelson. Imagine watching a convicted charged with first-degree homicide and having no penitence. This is Scott Nelson, a 55-year-old for whom homicide is just a sole expression. He kidnapped and assassinated 50-year-old Jennifer Fulford without any reason. And that's not it. What really makes it heartbreaking is his heartless confession. Cold, callous, and sarcastic. That's what you get from this shameless convict. He spent nearly a decade behind the bars for armed robbery, but even after 10 years, he doesn't seem to change his desire for violence. In the end, the jury saw right through him, and despite his appeal for capital punishment, he was sentenced for lifelong prison. Michael Swanson. A 17-year-old in Iowa City committed double homicide of Sheila Myers and Vicki Bowman Hall. And in return, he laughed, smiled, and smirked, showing absolutely no remorse. In 2010, on attempted robbery before leaving the store, he took the lives of 2 shop employees. He shot her mother in the cheek.
She was shot in the cheek and...
Later, after a high-speed chase, he was arrested in Minnesota. The most grimming thing is when asked, he literally replied, he did that because he felt powerful.
What did you feel when you pulled the trigger? I felt powerful.
Her daughter was devastated as he utterly disrespected her innocent, defenseless mother. In the end, after looking at his reaction, the jury decided to treat him as an adult. Michael Swanson was found guilty of the crime, sentencing him to life in prison. John Spooner.
And if those people weren't in back of that boy, you would have shot that boy too.
I wouldn't try.
Composed, unashamed, and no remorse, that's John Spooner, a 76-year-old Milwaukee man who brutally took down a 13-year-old Darius Simmons in broad daylight. He wrongfully accused the kid of robbery, and without confirmation, he just went with it.
And he got gunned down for something that he didn't do.
Even if he committed it, he had no right to go this far. He was a promising student full of zeal to serve the country one day, but John destroyed everything, his dreams and his future. He went far away as his classmates remembered him. His teacher was all too consumed by sorrow as he talked about him.
And for other people not to value these young men's lives is very sad.
But what makes it worse is his complete lack of remorse. Jury had no second thoughts of sentencing this racial man, a penalty of life prison with no chances of parole. Ronnie O'Neal.
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
That's what you call overt blatancy. Homicide in whatever circumstances can never ever be justified. And he brutally took down her girlfriend and child. At the last moment, she tried to protect herself. Broken and afraid, she rang 911. Just by hearing it, you can feel how obnoxiously unjustified that was. But this guy stands audacious and shameless.
And I am not sorry for the things I did do.
Thinking, how can someone really not be guilty for what he has done? That's probably because of the heightened ego making him go blind to see the misery and agony he has given to the family. In the end, Ronnie O'Neal was sentenced to 3 life sentences. Andrew Romero.
You know, there are a lot of victims in this case, but I'm sorry, Andrew Romero is not one of them.
Meet this guy. Andre Romero, convicted of cop homicide and shooting his own girlfriend. During the hearing, the family was devastated, not knowing how to overcome the befallen sorrow. But on the other side, watch his face, all too cold and emotionless. He literally had no remorse whatsoever. Later on, he was convicted of the crime and sentenced to life in prison. 1 week later, a recorded call revealed that he was still full of himself.
I don't know why they have me over here in MGC. They just left all my stuff over there and just...
There was no way he had any remorse for it. So much so that they ended up saying this.
You will die in prison.
Tyrell Webster. This is 27-year-old Tyrell, a convicted homicide criminal. He chose to smile, grind, and even smirk while the sister speaks of her brother. And that's not all. When asked of his opinion, the astonishingly cold reply was,
"Do that matter?"
Yes, it does.
This guy gunned down Robert Cleveland Watson in broad daylight. And now, when Watson's sister, who is legally blind, shares her pain, he sniggers. Ultimately, all she had to say was,
"Because you know what, you laughing now. But the moment they get you behind those prison walls for the rest of your life."
In the end, the judge sentenced him to 18 years behind bars. Lots of time to think, right? Alan McCarty. In a child custody case, things went shocking when Alan McCarty chose to behave erratic by swearing and threatening the judge himself. Prosecution wanted to take things forward, but his attitude was never making it easy. So much so, the judge had to send him in the back room with a one-sided mirror. But as expected, this only minimized the disturbances. Just because of his reckless, unjustified behavior, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison as he threatened the magistrate himself. For a person like this who cannot keep his calm, a child is definitely not in good hands. Donta Wright. He smirked and smiled as the mother shed tears on the loss of her dear son. This is 17-year-old Donta Wright, convicted homicide criminal, charged with armed robbery, firearm felony, and second-degree assassination. After all this insensitive guy literally couldn't stop disrespecting the feelings of those heartbroken parents. Later, when given the opportunity to talk about it, despite being the perfect opportunity to show at least some remorse, listen to what he had to say.
"I'll be home soon. R.I.P. Keon. I love my family."
On this, the judge got infuriated and decided to set the motion in trial, calling it as the worst case of his career. Darrell Brooks. This is Darrell Brooks, who recklessly drove his SUV over 30 miles per hour into a Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and was convicted of the homicide of 6 people and injuring dozens of others. And watch this guy. It doesn't look like he has any remorse. Prosecution argued that his rampage was intentional.
He plowed through 68 different people. He kept going until he got to the end, and there was no more bodies to hit.
When asked, this guy insisted on representing himself in court.
"I think I will probably be better served representing myself."
But eventually he lost his patience, so much so that he started harassing the judge. Ultimately, his claims became baseless when the inspection revealed that there was absolutely nothing wrong with the car. So, the jury charged him with all the charges and sentenced him to 99 years in prison. Jeremy Christian. 35-year-old Jeremy Christian, with major drinking and anger issues, got it all wrong as he lost control and burst out. On May 25, 2017, he literally stabbed people and took the lives of 2 while injuring the 3rd one. Surviving victim argued that streets can never be safe if dangerous people like Jeremy are around. And perhaps that's right, because this is not for the first time. Watch this footage 1 month before the violent attack.
Take your mask off and debate! That's why I'm here! This is my soapbox!
What makes it even sadder is he shows literally no remorse of his actions. Rather, he shouts in constant denial of what wrong he did. The jury decided to act and sentence him to 2 life sentences without the chance of parole. Case of child abuse.
man. I didn't do anything wrong, man.
Lawson, a man who recklessly abused his own child, causing him a permanent disability and permanent loss of hearing. Watch her mother, Sharon Lawson, as she expresses her grief. And that's not all, because it became even worse, as when he was about to be sentenced, he literally bursted out in anger, shouting and swearing. His rashness had taken an already fading life form, the kid, and he has not even remorse to offer. That's insane, and that's not justified. Here is why the jury decided to sentence him for child abuse. Perhaps he can think of what he did while in prison. And now, let us move on to our subscriber pick of the day. This image was sent to us by a subscriber. Similarly, if you ever wish to know more about an image you come across, just send it to us. Who knows, we might even feature it in one of our videos. This image resonates to the case that happened in 2005. This guy, Esteban Capario, a 24-year-old, was being questioned for stabbing an 85-year-old Madeline Gata. But during the investigation, something happened that brought agony in the whole police department. While being interrogated by two detectives, when one of them got out to bring some water for him, while he gunned down twice beloved officer Jimmy Allen and jumped out of the window trying to escape. Victim's family was brought to tears the moment he entered the room, and throughout the proceeding, not a single word of remorse for the deceased family. The courtroom sentenced him to spend the rest of his life behind bars. See you next time.